Elizabeth moved to Bath. Maria was only 4 years old, and the twins, Richard and Elizabeth, were 6 when their mummy and daddy decided to go abroad for a little while. Going abroad means that they went to another country. They couldn't take Maria, Elizabeth, and Richard with them, so they enrolled their 3 children in a boarding school near where their kind Uncle Edmund lived. Uncle Edmund was Maria's mummy's brother, and he loved Maria and her twin brother and sister very much. Uncle Edmund lived in the country in a pretty holiday town called Bath. This town was a long, long way from London, and was called Bath because of the hot water springs there. The Romans, who were ancient people, built public baths for the people to enjoy. If you visit England one day, you will be able to see them. When Maria's mummy told Maria and her brother and sister that they were going on a very long carriage ride or on a steam train to Bath to stay near Uncle Edmund, they were happy and excited. They loved Uncle Edmund and looked forward to travelling through lots of pretty farmland and over twisting rivers and through quaint old towns much smaller than London. I don't know whether Maria's mummy and daddy chose a train or a carriage for the children's journey from London to Bath. If it was a train, it would have been extra exciting because the children had never travelled by train. It would have been a bumpy, slow ride, and the carriages would have been uncovered. If it snowed or rained, the passengers became wet and cold. I'm sure Maria wrote a story about their journey, whether they went by train or carriage. The next day, to leave for Bath finally came, and the exciting journey began. They passed over many hills and across rivers and through lots of small towns and pretty countrysides dotted with thatched cottages. I hope it didn't rain. Passing through Windsor, where there was a beautiful, huge castle, was the most exciting part of the journey. The Queen and her husband Prince, who had 7 children at the time, sometimes stayed there instead of at Buckingham Palace in London. The Queen's name was Queen Victoria and her husband's name was Prince Albert. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were very much in love, and they loved dancing together. They loved doing the waltz, and Maria, who loved dancing, said that one day she wanted to learn to do it too. A very strict governess travelled with Maria, Elizabeth, and Richard, so it was nice to see kind Uncle Edmund's round smiling face and outstretched arms waiting for them when they reached Bath. Uncle Edmund didn't have children of his own, and he loved Maria, Richard, and Elizabeth so much. He cared for them very well until they started school at Mr. Browning's boarding school, and when they finally moved to their boarding school, he visited them often. Uncle Edmund was a tailor who worked hard making clothes for other people. When Maria was little, there weren't big shops with lots of clothes. If a man in Bath wanted a new suit, he made an appointment with Uncle Edmund, who designed it and worked out how to cut the material and sew it together. Uncle Edmund's suits always fitted well and looked smart. Uncle Edmund always made sure his 2 nieces and nephew were happy in their new school. After all, Maria was only 4 years old and Elizabeth and Richard were only 6 years old. They were very tiny to be in Mr. Browning's boarding school. Uncle Edmund especially wanted to check up on Maria and Elizabeth because there were many more boys than girls in their boarding school. Hardly any girls went to school when Maria and Elizabeth were children. Little girls had to stay at home to help with housework and cooking and washing, and usually they had to do housework for other people too. Even when she was a tiny girl, Maria wanted to change this rule. A lot more boys than girls went to school. The lucky boys stayed there until they were 14 years old, but many boys who went to school had to leave before they were 10 years old. They left to go to work to help their parents pay for their food and clothes. At least they knew how to read and write, unlike the girls who were not even taught how to write their own names. Maria and Elizabeth and Richard thought they were lucky to go to school and learn to read and write properly. Maria felt sorry for all the little children who would never go to school. She never stopped thinking about how she could change this rule. Some of the children were only 4 years old, like she was, and they worked so hard. They felt like falling asleep before they had finished their work. Children today are so lucky that they go to lovely schools like St. Andrews, where they learn to read and write, and they also have lots of fun with their friends there. Maria had the most fun at Mr. Browning's boarding school in the dancing and exercise classes, which were set to music. How excited she was when she learnt to do the waltz just like Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. Finally, when Mummy came home from abroad and arrived in Bath, she told her 3 children that their daddy couldn't be with them yet. She said that she now had to go to work to earn money to buy food and clothes, and she couldn't do that without their cooperation. Maria, Richard and Elizabeth would be staying at Mr. Browning's boarding school a little bit longer while their mother went to work. There wasn't any daycare when Maria was a little girl. Maria liked being at Mr. Browning's boarding school. The teachers, including Mr. Browning, were strict, but Mrs. Browning's twinkling eyes and jokes made Maria giggle. Mrs. Browning loved Maria too. She so enjoyed Maria's stories that she always read them to other children and to Mr. Browning, who usually managed to smile too. Maria's mummy was a hairdresser, but she wasn't a hairdresser like the ones we see in the shops today. Instead, she was called an artiste in hair. She designed beautifully fancy hairstyles for rich ladies who were going to balls. She and Uncle Edmund worked very hard so that Maria, Elizabeth, and Richard could have an education. They were extremely lucky children. Even though Maria and her brother and sister stayed at their boarding school every night, sometimes they were allowed to come home on the weekends. Maria loved those weekends, and she always read all the stories she had written at school to her mummy and Uncle Edmund. If visitors came, they always asked to hear Maria's stories too.